MacVoices is sponsored by MintMobile. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, today we have something a little different. I was a guest on Ewan Rankin's British Tech Network show a few weeks ago, and I got to meet Luke Bissell, who is a developer based in Scotland, and he has a number of projects under his belt, including a Rugby App that we're going to talk a little bit about. But I was as interested as anything in talking to Luke about being a developer. So, Luke Bissell, welcome to MacVoices. It's great to talk to you again.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's good to talk to you as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time because you're staying up late, obviously, to talk to me here in the U.S. But Luke, some of the way that you got into development, you talked a little bit with Ewan about it, but I'd like to introduce you to my audience and let them know, someone as a younger person who's just sort of in the early stages of getting into iOS development.
Yeah, so I, until last year, was studying at the University of St Andrews. I did computer science. And when I graduated, I spent a bit of time wondering, what do I do next? And I had kind of two main interests. One of them was immersive technologies, so virtual reality, augmented reality, and things like that. And the other was kind of the Apple ecosystem and Apple development. So I decided while I was looking for a job, I should use my time wisely. So I decided to teach myself iOS development. And I'm now, my day job is in the immersive technologies side, and my hobby is iOS development.
So you never get away from the tech world.
Yeah, it's develop at work, come home, develop. I try and take some time off every so often.
So I'm going to leave the immersive technology side, the day job, off to the side because, we all have trouble talking about our day jobs and not violating confidentiality. But I want to hear about how you taught yourself how to program for iOS. With a computer science background, I imagine it's easier than someone who didn't have it. But how did you go about learning what you need to know?
So to start with, I used I think it's the Stanford iOS development course that's available through iTunes U. And obviously, I think it's a course that's been run for years and years, but there was a relatively recent one available that introduced Swift and all the relatively modern iOS development technologies. So I used that and kind of ran through that to teach myself the basics. And then beyond that, it was just a lot of kind of throwing myself into it, trying to do things, seeing if they worked. If I couldn't get them to work, do some research, learn new parts of the system, and gradually learning more and more. I'm still in the early stages. There's still a huge amount that I don't yet know, but I've learned enough to at least get one app complete.
Luke, I think that's inspirational in some ways, because a lot of us, we may not be trying to learn programming, but we're trying to learn how to use sophisticated applications. Sounds like the process is kind of the same. I have something I want to do. I get partway there, and so I have to go do research to find out how to accomplish it in that particular app. You're learning the same thing sort of under the hood.
Yeah, I think any complex piece of software or development software or things like Photoshop and video editing software, you are always intimidated at first because of the complexity and you don't know anything, but you kind of you have to find some way to get your foot in the door. And once you've got the basics, it's actually, I find it's not too difficult to then gradually expand your knowledge base and learn it slowly, but learning while doing stuff is what I found is the way that makes that the smoothest process for me, at least.
I agree with you completely. It's interesting to sit and watch tutorials or work through exercises of a particular program, but there's nothing like having some kind of project. Doesn't have to be a big project, but some kind of project that you want to accomplish, and then that sort of forces you. It gives you a door into the thinking and the logic of the way that particular program works. And so I'm right there with you. That is absolutely, for me too, it's the best way to learn something.
Yeah, I think when you're just following a tutorial, at a certain point, you end up not taking it in because you're just copying what they're doing a lot of the time. Whereas even just by saying, I'll follow this, but I'm going to change it. I wonder how can I change this color? How can I do this? You end up learning a lot more by doing that.
Yeah, I agree. This may be an unfair question, but I will ask it anyway, because you're making your living with the day job in tech. How well did the formal education in computer science prepare you for the iOS world?
I'd say quite well. I obviously during my time at university, there was a variety of languages I spent time with. It was primarily Java, which is obviously somewhat different from Swift, but the core fundamentals are similar. And I think my degree was quite a practical computer science degree. I know some are far more theoretical than mine, but it gave me a lot of time programming, which taught me what it really taught me, I think, is how to Google for the right thing to solve the problem you're looking for. And I think a lot of modern day programming is just knowing how to search for the right thing to solve your problem. So I think it was quite helpful. Obviously, I'm not too far removed from my university time, so maybe with some more distance, I'd have a different perspective on it. But currently, I can't. I'm happy with what I got from that experience.
I mean, that's so good to hear. I'm not sure how it is in Europe, but here in the States, there's a bit of there are conversations going on about the value of college educations versus the cost of college educations, and what you really come out with to get the job and to start working in whatever your chosen field is. And it's refreshing to hear that your university time, at least prepared you to, it sounds like, a significant degree for both your day job and also for this newfound second hobby or second career or whatever as an iOS developer.
No, I think it did. I'm quite lucky coming from Scotland that we get free education. So it might be a different situation if you're having to pay a significant sum of money to get your secondary education. However, I definitely, from my course, I definitely feel it set me up nicely for where I am right now.
That's great. So let's talk about the one app that you were talking about on the Mac show, and the one ad that you say is finished and it's out there that people can go and get, and it is a rugby app. Why rugby?
Well, I used to play rugby. I don't anymore, and I'm a big fan of rugby. Obviously, the Rugby World Cup's on right now, so there's a lot of talk about rugby, particularly in the UK. But back when I played rugby, I remember one day we decided we wanted to record stats for the match we were playing. And I remember we sat there with a notepad and we're trying to tick things off and keep track of it. And it was really difficult. And at the end of the day, we got these relatively useless stats out of it because they're way too complicated. We couldn't see them in any useful way. We couldn't visualize them at all. So, yeah, at that time, it must have been about 5 or 6 years ago, I had this idea, you could do this with an app in a far simpler way. There's a limited number of things that can happen at any single point in a match due to the rules of the sport. So why don't we just give the user that as a simple input mechanism, just show them what can happen right now. They select the one and then it progresses like that and you record the whole match. And then at the end, that data can be translated into a whole set of different statistics and visualizations. It took me 6 years to get around to making it, but it was an obvious thing once I'd started teaching myself iOS development that the first thing I'd try and do was this app I'd had in the back of my mind for a long time. That's what caused. That's why I went with the Rugby app.
Well, I like it. It's so easy to just say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to develop an app, and I'm going to sell it on the App Store, and it's going to be great." And sometimes having a decent idea for an app, finding something that is either not being done at all, or isn't being done well, or at the very least isn't being done the way you think it should be done, I think is half the battle. I think it's almost like trying to sit down and write a novel or a story. I can do it once I've got a direction, but trying to find that direction is tough. So I love the fact that you took something that you already were familiar with and involved in, you saw a need, and then you went to try to fill it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's a relatively niche app. The number of people who are training, coaching, playing rugby is not insignificant, but it's not everybody on the App Store. So I am limiting my market by going down this way, but I also have made a relatively unique app that's not got any significant competition right now, which is, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah, and with all the apps on the App Store that cover so many different things, that's not an insignificant accomplishment to find a place that you can fit a niche that doesn't have anything.
Mint Mobile is sponsoring this edition of MacVoices. When was the last time you considered switching your cell carrier? I'm betting it was the last time you paid your bill. There has to be a better option out there than the same big carriers that have the big retail stores and the big bills to go with them. Now, however, you do have a choice. Mint Mobile is a new, modern kind of carrier, doing business online so they keep the costs down. But lower costs don't mean inferior service. Mint Mobile has amazing coverage, 4G LTE data plans, and even lets you keep your existing phone if you want to. And Mint Mobile has all the options you want and use. Unlimited nationwide talk and text, and data plans that run from 3 to 12 gigabytes per month. Those big carriers want you to think that the activation process is complex and difficult, so you won't leave them. Mint Mobile shows you just how easy it is. Your SIM arrives at your door, the activation process takes minutes, not hours, and you're up and running like nothing changed. Except that it did. You just moved into the 21st century with Mint Mobile. I want you to get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free by visiting mintmobile.com/MacVoices. That's mintmobile.com/MacVoices. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Mint Mobile for their support of MacVoices.
Luke, I wanted to ask you about the way you created the app. You were talking about how you have the knowledge of rugby in your head, You knew the statistics you were trying to capture. I mean, is it a matter of sort of walking through those logically, or in a linear fashion, or is it trying to gather everything up all together and then figure out how best to create the interface to enter it? I mean, how do you approach that kind of thing?
So I initially for the tracking interface for how you track the app or track a rugby match, I started with an idea for how it would look. It was fairly simple. You'd have kind of the score at the top of the two teams, and then tracking down along in the middle, then an undo at the bottom. So that was my general idea. First of all, I tried to make that for one part of the game, essentially, see if that worked. And then it was build that out into kind of a complete cycle where you could record a component part of a match without everything being there. And then it was literally sitting down with the rules of rugby, making sure pretty much every eventuality was possible. Make sure that all the different strange, slightly obscure rules could be recorded. I think I've got that mostly. However, it has been pointed out to me there are a few edge cases where the app doesn't yet allow you to record things, mostly just because these don't happen very often, and I only had so many matches I actually managed to test it in. But I'm trying to update it and add these back in. But yeah, it's very much a process of trying to methodically go through and make sure every possible kind of connection can happen.
So I hadn't thought about it, and if I understood what you meant, so if there's an infraction of the rules, is that something that you're trying to capture? And I'm afraid I'm going to try to. I don't want to go off into another sport because then we start to lose people. But if so you're not only tracking.
If it helps, go for it.
Well, are you a golfer?
No.
Not from Scotland. You're from Scotland, and you're not a golfer. Okay.
And went to St Andrews as well, and no, never played.
Well, I'm thinking in certain circumstances, I might inadvertently break a rule. Now, golf is not quite the team sport that rugby is, but if I break that rule, I incur a penalty, as I would think you do in rugby. So you're trying to capture not just the fact that I incurred the penalty, but also what the rule was that I broke.
Yeah, so I mean, as much it's a balance between trying to capture as much information as possible while also making it simple enough that anybody who knows the rules can record a match. I want the interface to be usable on a phone. So it's for example, in rugby, when you give away a penalty, there's a wide variety of reasons the penalty could have been conceded. Once that penalty is given, obviously in different situations, it's obvious why the penalty is given. If you're in a particular situation and a penalty was given, I can then infer that the penalty was given for a specific reason. In open play, it's not so obvious. So I actually present a choice to the user so that they can manually input what the penalty was for.
Okay, got it. So yeah, that is a challenge, and especially with an iPhone interface. I mean, we've got much larger iPhones now, but you want to make this. And rugby is a pretty fast-moving game, so if you're trying to tick off this stuff and keep track of it accurately, that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah, it is. Luckily, for most situations in a match, there is only a maximum of about 8 things that can happen. In general open play, there's a bit more than that, but it's surprising how, if you kind of make almost a flow chart, a decision tree of what can happen in a match, it's not as complicated as you might think. the rules kind of do. They can be condensed into a relatively simple interface.
Interesting. I'm really intrigued by this because I love the fact that you did this, and Ewan Rankin was just raving about this because he's a rugby player, and he just was raving about how great the interface was and how it's been so useful to him, and his rugby team to capture not just the scoring but the stats to help them improve, which of course is what every sports app wants to do, I think, is help you improve in some fashion. So you obviously spent a lot of time and the right kind of time in developing this to make it genuinely useful and not just another thing to tick off. One side scores, the other side scores, and that's it.
Yeah, no, it was talking to you, and it's after 6-9 months of development. It was quite nice to hear other people say, actually, yeah, this is genuinely useful. This is something we're using, and it's helping us. And it was nice to hear, definitely.
The question we always have to ask when it comes to any app is this a free app, or are you charging for this, or how is that working?
So it is free to download and try. You can download it and you can try it out for 3 matches. After that, I've got a subscription in there. It's I think £3, probably $3, I imagine is how it translates per month. It's not insignificant. However, I believe it's for any rugby team. I think it's probably the most value they'll get out of £3 a month that they can come up with.
Just leave a couple pints on the bar and pay for the app.
Yeah.
No, we've talked a lot about subscriptions here, and I find developers doing what you just did. You're almost apologizing for it, and I don't agree with that. I think that you need to be paid. This is the kind of thing that you will, if you have that need, you will get a lot of value out of it. And in the meantime, you're continuing to update it and improve it and make sure that it continues to work with iOS 13 and move it into the future. And unfortunately, you can't. It's not the kind of app you can charge $40 or $50 or 40 or 50 pounds for. You have to have that kind of steady flow of it. And it just I think it makes sense for something like this that is going to be used, this week, next week, the following week, pretty regularly.
Yeah, that was my thinking. It's the market size, as discussed earlier, is not massive, but not insignificant. So it felt like a kind of a good compromise. I thought letting people try it as a way to entice them in made sense, but then also, as you say, need to try and make some money back on it.
Sure, absolutely. Luke, I think it's great. I think the story is really intriguing that this is a self-taught kind of thing, and yet you've got an app out there on the store. So it just goes to show that anybody can do it, and especially if you can come up with a good idea, that gives you a place to start and a place to push forward. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So for the folks who want to learn more about all your apps and about you, where's the best place for them to go?
So I have a website that's kind of just my personal portfolio. That is lukebissell.co.uk. You can find Breakdown on the App Store. If you just search Breakdown Rugby, that will come up. And I'm on Twitter at Luke L. Bissell. So every so often I put out some not very good wisdom.
I have an idea your wisdom's just as good, if not better, than a lot of people on Twitter.
It's not a huge amount of competition, maybe.
Luke, thank you so much. As I said when we started, I really enjoyed hearing some of the discussions on the Mac show with you, and I'm delighted we got a chance to talk here. I hope you'll come back and we'll do it again. I'm not sure what the topic will be, but we'll do something.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Great.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm intrigued by the world of developers. I wish I had the ability or the time or both to become a developer. It's not happening right now, so it's fun just to hear how they think and their approach to problems. And I hope you appreciate, even if you don't play rugby, some of what Luke had to say. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.